January 10th, 2026, Buddha Dhamma 11.9, part 2, page 1162. Systems of preconditions in harmony with natural laws. Craving is normally occupied by two factors. As a group of three, these factors are referred to part2 Dhamma. In this case, it's mental defilements that cause complication, proliferation, and perturbation. Remember, part is evil or not good, unwholesome. Here are simple definitions for these three factors. The first one is the desire to obtain, tanha. The second one is the desire for predominance, or mana. The third one is the narrow-mindedness, attachment to personal views and beliefs, ditthi. These three defilements focus on the center and one's sense of self. They are the factor for selflessness. They cause problems within a system of preconditions. Whenever they act as the force behind a system of preconditions, they cause all sorts of confusion and turmoil. The problems are not limited to suffering, dukkha, inherent in people's work and education. Every sort of human problems is caused by these defilements, leading to distress and agitation. An awareness of these three defilements enable one to find solutions to life's problems. The solution lies in applying one's intelligence to find ways for human conventional laws to link up with and support natural laws. Human intelligence, hence, using your own intuition and wisdom. Clever people establish conventional laws which help lead natural dynamics in the direction producing results consistent with their desires and objectives. If we want a tree to grow, then we provide the necessary care, like pruning, watering, and adding fertilizer. Through division of labor, one organizes a gardener to devote his time and effort to this task. One reassures this person that is in respect to earning a living, will provide with an adequate income. The gardener needs not be anxious and can fully devote himself to this work. In this way, one establishes a bridge between human conventions and natural laws, enabling people to create optimum causes and conditions aligned with natural dynamics. If the gardener possesses wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, he wishes to see the plant flourishes, and he wants to act in order to bring about this state of completion. If he is assured about sustaining his livelihood, he can devote himself fully to this task. In this way, he experiences happiness and receives a salary. The work is successful and the worker is happy. This way, the system of human regulations is coordinated with the causal dynamics of natural laws, so they proceed effectively in line with wishes of human beings. If, however, the gardener is devoid of wholesome enthusiasm, acting as the catalyst for natural dynamics, the work will not be successful. If he acts simply from craving, desiring only the results promised by a system of preconditions, he will be unhappy because he will have to force himself to work, and the gardening work itself will be unfruitful. If this lack of wholesome enthusiasm is prevalent, all human systems and institutions will be distorted, imbalanced, and corrupted. Work will be unsuccessful. People will be unhappy. Moreover, nevertheless, and in addition to, when people are devoid of wholesome enthusiasm and dominated by craving, they do not exert themselves in their work. They avoid their work and are dishonest and deceitful, giving rise to corruption and waste. The consequences is that one must emphasize secondary systems of supervision and control. When craving takes hold of these systems of supervision, new overlapping systems of control need to be established. The three defilements of perturbation, cha, dhamma, then causes further turmoil and distress. In the end, human society is led into ruin and calamity, as is described in the old Thai poem. Quote, "When the bot is spent, the tiger dies." For this reason, it is important that a system of precondition does not destroy or crush wholesome enthusiasm, chanta. One needs to be alert in one's intelligence, one's wisdom, to ensure that the system of preconditions supports wholesome enthusiasm, which mobilizes desirable natural process. In today's age, which is dominated by systems based on greed, it is still possible for wholesome and virtuous development to occur because enough people possess an adequate degree of wholesome enthusiasm. Even if this is not always obvious, we need to prevent a system of craving from becoming the dominant dynamic, which eclipses wholesome enthusiasm until it is gradually recedes and eventually disappears. Instead, we ought to make wholesome enthusiasm the mainstay. Although craving may still cause some trouble, people will retain an adequate degree of stability and safety. It is necessary to acknowledge that human system of preconditions are the driving force in the world. What are our options when we recognize that people exist at different levels of spiritual development and that people, or most people, are still committed to a system based on craving? It is not suitable for people to simply follow their desires. It is essential that those people responsible for establishing the systems of preconditions are endowed with wholesome desire, and they ensure the wholesome desire is given in a prompt role within such a system. Moreover, they should set down decisive measures of heedfulness, appamado, for all people to use while engaged in developing themselves. This key subject of desire tends to get overlooked. It is vital that one is able to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome desire, kusala dhamma and akusala dhamma, or in this case, kusala chanta and akusala chanta, to distinguish between them, wholesome and unwholesome desire. When one has understood this matter, it will be easy to determine how to solve problems. One will develop happiness with confidence. As mentioned earlier, we're talking about the Thai poem Lokha Niti. The story goes that a zoo acquires a tiger for which one baht is allotted each day to keep it well fed. The keeper responsible for feeding the tiger embezzles 25 satang, so 25 cents. Satang is cents, each day. When the director noticed that the tiger is not filled out, he sends an inspector to find out what's going on. The inspector discovers the truth. He demands 25 satang, 25 cents, as hush money from the keeper. The tiger gets thinner, prompting the director to send more senior inspector. He too demands 25 satang, 25 cents, as hush money. The tiger is soon just skin and bones. The director sends the chief inspector, but he demands the remaining 25 satang for himself, 25 cents, causing the tiger to perish. Point 3. Deriving the greatest benefit from systems of preconditions. A frequently asked question in the modern age is how wholesome desire, chanta, functions in the domain of work. The term chanta can be simply translated as pleasure, liking, or delight. Take, for example, a job interview, during which one is asked, do you like this kind of work? The term like here is ambiguous. One person may answer, I like it, but simply that he likes the good salary or the fact that the work requires little exertion and provides a lot of free time. This is one kind of liking. Another person may reply, I like it, on the grounds that the work conforms to her skills and that it is beneficial and constructive to society. The term like and desire encompass both craving, tanha, and wholesome enthusiasm, chanta. For this reason, it is important to clarify how one uses these terms. It requires discernment to understand the real meaning of the question. Do you like this kind of work? Which is, does this work fit your skills? And do you see the value of this work? It is not the matter of only liking the work because of high income or the opportunity to be lazy, have lots of time off, which stems from selfishness and craving. If we have wholesome enthusiasm, we truly love our work because we recognize the value. We see how it benefits society and helps develop our nation. If the social benefit of work is not clearly evident, or if one does not recognize the wider value of one's work and yet the work is required, one can generate wholesome enthusiasm with the attitude that the work is of the value for self-development and leads to improvement in our own lives. One aspect of work is that it is domain of personal growth. Every kind of work or activity, whether it involves a task that we enjoy or not, is an opportunity for personal development. The more difficult the task, the greater the opportunity to train, to sharpen skills, and to increase intelligence. If one can summon wholesome desire and generate a wish to train, one will enjoy even those things previously found unpleasant. One will delight even in the difficult work. The more challenging the task, the more one gains. By the time the task is complete, one has passed through an extensive period of self-development. Our daily work and activities take up most of the amount of time in our lives, approximately 8 hours, or 1/3 of each day. The remaining 16 hours or so are taken up by sleeping or traveling, or of simply being fatigued. For this reason, one needs to make the most out of these 8 hours of productive activity. If one needs to force oneself to do this work, then one is in trouble. These 8 hours will be wasted, and one's life will be fitted with unhappiness. It is thus vital to generate wholesome desire, to recognize the importance of having love for one's work. One can tell oneself that by having such love, one will develop oneself, develop one's capabilities, develop one's ability to solve problems, develop wisdom, and develop the mind. One will grow in endurance, energy, self-restraint, mindfulness, and concentration. This wholesome enthusiasm will bestow meaning to one's work and will increase one's happiness. When engaging in this pleasurable work, the mind is stifled without a sense of relief. This mental constriction and confinement is suffering indeed. The mind then gets caught up in a cycle of such suffering. When the mind finds a way out of this impasse or in this impression, one feels relieved and happy. Therefore, whenever one is experiencing difficulties, one should generate such wholesome and desire. Then every activity will be endowed with such zeal, and as mentioned above, one will recognize that at the very least one has the valuable opportunity to develop oneself. Most often when working, one must encounter other people. If one is not plagued by stifling thoughts or emotions, these encounters are also an opportunity for self-training. One can train, for example, in speech. What sort of speech is effective, non-offensive, and conducive to friendship and cooperation? All such activities are opportunities for training. Work may be defined as those tasks necessary to accomplish. Wholesome enthusiasm is the desire to perform these tasks, along with the desire to understand the details of this work. The desire to act is thus inherently as an aspect of training and of study. True training is comprised of the desire to know and the desire to act. By generating these desire to know and to act, the essence of training has been reached. The desire to train, the desire to learn, and the desire to act is the same as the desire to understand. When willingly engaged in a task, one trains oneself and is engaged in study. Both formal learning and formal work are aspects of training, because in both cases, one is improving one's life. If one practices correctly, one's entire life will be a form of training, of self-development. Technically speaking, one can use the term chanta in reference to all activities. It does not simply refer to one's work. There are two aspects of this term. The first is the desire for the natural state of completion. Here one wishes for all things which one is engaged to be well and in order or in good order, and reach a state of neutral completeness and fulfillment. Chanta is a desire to accord with the causes and conditions. One wishes for success directly in accord to causes and conditions. For example, every profession has a natural objective. The objective of the medical profession, for instance, is to cure people from illness. The objective of teaching profession is to instill goodness and knowledge in children or in pupils. We should always ask ourselves what the direct purpose of our specific individual profession is. Government work and the work by state institutions, example, requires a clear objective. Before beginning a job just over broke, we should clearly investigate its objective. We ask ourselves whether we agree with and approve of them. When we decide to then undertake the task, we can attend accurately to these objectives. And through our enthusiasm and determination, we seek to bring about results consistent with these objectives. This is chanta. As far as a salary or a financial reimbursement or remuneration, it is as far for a salary or a financial payment, this is a matter belonging to a system of preconditions which holds in desire and wisdom. One sees that money is a support for developing oneself fully to one's work in order to fulfill its objective without needing to worry about how one will earn one's livelihood or to see some form of occupation. Although one abides by a system of conventions, one understands the benefits from it. When people possess wholesome enthusiasm and understand the true purpose of their work and the nature and the agreed upon terms, the system will not be seen simply as a way to force people to work. One will discern that it aims to promote wholesome desires so that people commit themselves fully to their work and to be free from financial worries. If people have wholesome desire, are determined to perform their work in order to fulfill its true purpose, have love for the form of success and receive an adequate financial recompense, they and their families will abide in well-being. This correct, virtuous way of practice provides people with two kinds of happiness. First, they derive happiness directly from their work, knowing that they have attended it correctly. Secondly, they feel assured by the wages or the salary, knowing that it will be its support to further dictate themselves in their activity. They are pleased that their work progresses well, and they are confident and their enthusiastic effort leads to results consistent with the work's true objective, to the well-being of an institution or the nation. in a smooth and lasting way. This is how a system based on wholesome desire operates. D. Fun in learning, happiness in training. Now let us turn our attention to education. In the process of learning, it is imperative to generate wholesome enthusiasm. For this, it does not occur. People will not experience real happiness while learning. The best one can hope for in such a case is to have fun, which is happiness of someone dedicated to pleasure, similar to the pleasure derived from watching a play or watching a movie. If wholesome enthusiasm has been generated, whether one's learning process is fun or not, becoming a minor, insignificant matter. Granted, having fun fosters motivation and interest in students. It is an instrument for facilitating an understanding of the gist of the subject at hand. Having fun, however, is not the essence of education. It's not the essential part of true learning process. In connection is to the explanation above, having fun is simply a supportive factor which one must know how to apply in order to avoid wholesome desire and to enter the true learning process. Education begins with wholesome enthusiasm, and it is vital for the children possesses such desire. Although amusement for children is useful when it is successfully helps to generate wholesome desire. Without wholesome desire, one must rely entirely on having fun. One must constantly increase this sense of fun, needing to constantly entertain the children in wearisome for the teacher, who need to come up with new ways of providing the students with such fun activities. It is true that an ability to make learning fun is an admirable skill, but it's important to also instill wholesome enthusiasm. It is necessary to distinguish these two qualities and to ensure fun is not simply a way of gratifying the desire for pleasure, which is often the case, say, by watching a movie. Otherwise, the teacher resembles an actor, and the pleasure derived by having fun is a form of feeding craving. This feeding of craving, by amusing oneself with sights, sounds, tastes, tactile objects, etc., give rises to problems which then need to be rectified. The basic problems is an attachment to such enjoyment, along with the sense of apathy and boredom, which requires people to seek increasingly greater amounts and degrees of stimulation. Using such entertainments in teaching will at first provide much fun for the students, but eventually they will grow accustomed to boredom and to become bored with it. The next time one must add to the amusement or introduce new forms of entertainment that's increasing the stimulation and gratification. This is because an endless cycle. The teachers become fatigued and the students themselves are at dead ends, spinning round in a vortex of craving. The students become addicted to such entertainments, only seeking amusement rather than being fascinated with learning. They wait for the next performance or show. They do not have the desire to learn and seek knowledge by themselves. In this way, the flow of craving is strengthened. If one is not careful, children will not be interested in learning. Instead, they will only delight in the aspect of entertainment. They will not advance to acquiring vital information. They will not generate wholesome enthusiasm. For this reason, it is essential for one understands the proper role of entertainment and fun in education. Having fun helps to create an initial interest in learning. It is a preliminary and external factor in the true process of learning. It acts as a link to something greater, not as an end goal. The true purpose of the external factors in education is to generate internal factors within an individual. Teachers are an outside influence, paratogosa, meaning a voice of encouragement and guidance. Ideally, they are a positive influence and acts as virtuous fields. Kala na mitra, They transmit knowledge and promote certain kinds of seeing, listening, and thinking in order for their pupils to generate their own interest and enthusiasm, which then became the driving force of their studies. Besides transmitting specific information, the true success of a teacher does rest with his or her ability to help generate wholesome enthusiasm within the students. If teachers do not have this aim, then they can do is to entertain the students, which eventually leads to apathy and boredom on the part of the students, and fatigue on the path or the part of the teachers. Teachers, virtuous friends, or other external influences need thus to act as a medium, linking external factors with internal factors and helping students to generate virtuous qualities within themselves. Otherwise, teachers reinforce in the students the characteristics of being dependent on others. If teachers understand the true responsibility of the teaching profession, they will seek ways to facilitate an understanding in the students of the subject materials and to induce an interest in learning. If students develop this wholesome enthusiasm, they can progress in their studies independently. Although the teacher is not present, they will say, I have the subject of study to pursue. I want to research this matter. I wish to go to the library and read up to this subject. They desire or deserve happiness from this research because it satisfies their interest in learning. It fulfills their desire to gain knowledge. In this way, learning will progress naturally and automatically. If we are able to generate the wholesome desire as the starting point in our studies, our entire way of life and pursuit of happiness will change. The new kinds of happiness that gradually increases throughout this process is exceptionally and unexpected. Before, we only relied on craving, seeking to obtain and consume things. We were excitedly pursued desirable sights, sounds, smell, tastes, tangibles for consumption. When we experienced these things, we felt gratification. Yet, when we encountered undesirable objects, we were displeased, irritated, and distressed. Our happiness and unhappiness was entirely dependent on likes and dislikes, subjects to craving. Our views on happiness were limited to this dynamic. When one gives rise to wholesome enthusiasm, one experiences a new form of desire. One wishes to truly learn about things, to act in order to bring about improvement. When one obtains knowledge or does things well, one is happy. His happiness increases exponentially. One's relationship changes even to those things that are unpleasant and were formerly distressing. When one sees that these aspects are undesirable things that are worthy of study and investigation, one wants to understand them. One asks such questions as, how is this subject or object bad? Why is this subject or object undesirable? One begins to appreciate unpleasant things because they provide an opportunity for learning. Wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, leads people to appreciate and even to derive joy, piti, from undesirable things and situations. This happiness stems from gaining knowledge and one's own skillful action. Note that wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, is associated with and must be accompanied by panya, wisdom. This, unlike craving, tanha, which is accompanied by ignorance, avijja, requires no wisdom. Craving can arise at all times, while chanta, wholesome desire, is only developed when with the help of panya, wisdom. How is wholesome desire accompanied by wisdom? Let's say one encounters a disagreeable, unpleasant object or subject which is rejected by craving. Yet when wisdom recognizes that the object is beneficial in some way, Wholesome enthusiasm participates in the process. The desire to know and the desire to act are set in motion. Happiness follows along with the fulfillment of this desire. With the introduction of wholesome enthusiasm, likes and dislikes based on craving lose almost all their influence and power. Those things previously considered unacceptable by craving, those things which used to be deplorable and caused affliction, now with the power of wisdom and wholesome desirable, are able to provide happiness. In this way, one begins to a true form of education and training. Sikha is able to find happiness even from those things that do not offer gratification to craving. This process of learning then develops, whereby preferences and aversions gradually lose their ability to overwhelm and sway the mind. One's attentions, one's thoughts, one's happiness centers around knowledge and skillful action. Yo ni so mana sikara. This is how someone like Albert Einstein comes to be. On the practical level, if one is able to establish an education system promoting a basic level of wholesome enthusiasm, the nation will have an increased number of creators who will offset those consumers who have no desire to act other than to find ways to satisfy their craving. In sum, this process involves a delight in the goodness and completion of something. If the object has not yet reached a state of goodness and completion, one wants to act in order to help bring about this state. One wants to know what needs to be done to accomplish this. Alternatively, the desire to know precedes the desire to act. When one has gained the necessary knowledge, one is able to act according to one's wishes. When one completes this action and satisfies one's desire, happiness follows, and this happiness increases the more one accomplishes. The desire to know and the desire to act function in unison. These aspects of desire lead to and are accompanied by happiness and are true learning. If these two aspects of desire are absent, learning will be difficult. Students will be unwilling and be unhappy. If one is able to generate wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, learning will proceed automatically. In the same way, Gautama Buddha, stated that with the dawn as harbinger, the rising of the sun is guaranteed. In connection to society, to the relationship with other people, wholesome desire, chanta, can be expanded into 4 spiritual qualities. Refer to the 4 divine abidings, the 4 Brahma Viharas. Literally, qualities of characteristics of Brahma gods. Supreme spiritual qualities. The first one is metta, loving kindness. Second one, karuna, compassion. Third one, mudita, sympathetic joy. And the fourth one, upeka, equanimity. Here one can see how the development of desire runs parallel to the development of happiness. In fact, these 2 forms of development are identical. As one elevates desires from tanha to chanta, and if one develops this enthusiasm, happiness is expanded and deepened. Point E, piti, joy in sutta, learning, and piti from sutta. So joy in learning and joy from learning. Although deriving happiness as one studies its importance, a part of the process of learning is not enough. Happiness is not simply a stage in learning or a spiritual practice, but rather in the most essential part of one's goals, of one's studies. If one understands the true nature of happiness, one will discern that studying or training is in itself a development of happiness in order for the student or the practitioner to be truly happy. The genuine development of happiness requires a fulfillment of spiritual qualities, which are present in those people who are accomplished. I have written several books on the subject of happiness as the goal of education for spiritual training. Let us review some of the material in these books. Some of these books were written as long as 25 years ago, and in some cases, I can go no longer to find the text. All that remains is the title with the basic outline of the text. The texts include Education, a Tool for Development, Reflections on Reforming Education, a talk given on the 44th anniversary of the establishment of the Department of Curriculum and Institution Development, and peace comes from freedom and happiness. So the true purpose of education is to provide people with happiness. The book is from P.A. Payuto, scholarly Thai monk. He wrote a book on education. The true purpose of education is to provide people with happiness. It is not enough for people to enjoy their studies. Education also needs to lead people to happiness. People then dwell in a normal state of happiness. Moreover, the learning process itself is also endowed with happiness. Does modern education provide people with happiness, or does it make people simply hunger and yearn for happiness? An incorrect form of education leads people to discontentment. It becomes an instrument for sucking happiness out of people and making them thirst for it. The further one studies in such defective system of education, the greater is one's thirst for true happiness. One is in want of happiness while studying, and one generates from this system with yearning. One then rushes ahead in order to find personal happiness, competing for it, and creating suffering and hardship for others. When people who are deprived of happiness experience suffering, they vent their frustration out on others, seize whatever happiness they can find for themselves. If children are taught in such a harmful way upon completion of their studies, they will seek to maximize their own personal happiness. In this modern, technically developed age, one sees how people are caught up in the pursuit of happiness, to the extent that they no longer have time for others. They're in constant state of want in pursuit of happiness. They keep expecting to arrive in the future. The thirst for happiness is rampant through the entire society, including family, households, schools, and workplace. The mind state of happiness and deprivation is widespread, apparent throughout society. For this reason, we must emphasize that true education makes people happy and teaches people to look for happiness in correct ways. Those people who have passed a correct system of education are able to solve problems, dispel suffering, and establish themselves in happiness. They cultivate themselves in order to reach more refined forms of happiness. They share their happiness with others in a wide-ranging way. People who suffer from such form of problems often vent their frustration on others. And although this is an attempt on their part to find some kind of ease, their actions cause harms to others and to society. This includes those children who have some kind of difficulty and consequently act out in negative ways. On the contrary, those people who abide in happiness tend to share their joy with others, even when there is no direct intention to do so. Thus, to increase happiness in this world, we need to increase happiness in individuals. This corresponds with Gautama Buddha's aims in relation to society. Apaya gatam sukham lokam, to create and abide in a world that is happy, free from oppression. This is our task as human beings, to create a happier world, to reduce oppression, to offer mutual support and assistance, and to abide in collective lasting happiness. Point F. Despite the glut of consumable objects, happiness is on a wane. One of the consequences of the inability to know what is enough and the constant pursuit of happiness is that people develop the characteristics of being prone to suffering and to find it increasingly difficult to be happy. Compare this with children. Most children from the early days before they could walk, laugh openly, smile with delight, and are easily amused. Little things that they obtain or see give them happiness. But But as people grow up, they find it more and more difficult to find happiness. As mentioned above, those things that are at one time provides happiness now consider boredom, leading to indifference and a lack of enthusiasm. In order to be happy, things must accord with the long list of desires and preconditions, and yet these people still don't experience real gratification. They chase after things without ever reaching their destination. It becomes more and more difficult to satisfy them. When it becomes too increasingly difficult for people to be happy, they also become more easily agitated. Before going out without certain things, living with certain inconveniences, and being required to perform certain tasks without a problem, these situations didn't cause suffering. Later on, they may become well off, own an abundance of things, and be extremely comfortable. They can order others to do their work. The only muscle in the body that gets exercised is the index finger. But they may become attached to this ease and convenience. If they lack anything, if someone doesn't arrive exactly on time, if they don't get what they want, if they must do something requiring effort, all these situations become a source of suffering. They thus become more prone to suffering as they accumulate suffering. This runs counter to true spiritual development. If one is engaged in proper spiritual development, as one gets older and one should be more proficient at being happy, one should be able to increasingly generate internal happiness. One should find it easier to be happy and to be less prone to suffering. Those who are developing spiritually must be simultaneously developing happiness. Their happiness must be increasing. Within the ordinary sphere of human living situation or responsibility, they should feel confident about experiencing happiness. They can make the claim to others, "Don't waste your time trying to make me unhappy. You won't succeed." These days, however, the reverse seems to be occurring. People seem to find increasingly difficult to discover happiness. They are unnaturally more prone to suffering. Many children in the information technology age, seem to have this trait. One of the causes for this is the upsurge in technological advances permitting a quick gratification of desire in regard to consuming material things. It increases material comfort. The drawback is that people are more easily jaded or just feel that they cannot live without these comforts. In order to feel satisfied, they must acquire things as quickly as they desire them. The real reason, however, is an inadequate, incorrect spiritual practice. The result, that is, instead of technology growth helping to promote true happiness, it ends up crippling people's ability to experience happiness. People then become incapable of experiencing true happiness. This is what happens when people deal with technology incorrectly. They fail to derive the true benefit from it. Instead of receiving the positive effects, they receive negative ones. The greater the abundance of material things, the greater the ease of convenience in society. The more important it becomes for people to train their minds and develop the ability to find happiness. If people simply get caught up in pursuing pleasures for external objects, they will find it increasingly difficult to be happy. At the same time, they will neglect the training in and increase the capability to experience happiness. Besides squandering an opportunity to develop themselves, they will eventually be incapable of any form of happiness. For this reason, give heed to developing one's capability to experience happiness. Otherwise, there will be no end to your problems. People's own search for happiness will be futile, and their internal suffering will intensify. Mutual oppression in society will increase, and the world will become a more troubled place. There will be no hope for peace. If one develops happiness correctly, however, all internal dilemmas will be resolved. Various spiritual factors will be activated and set into place naturally because it is correct spiritual practice. The vital spiritual factors are naturally linked and integrated. Since the desire for the material objects is thus fraught with danger, and it is the cause for various kinds of wrongdoing. People desire sense pleasures within a system of preconditions. The result is that the extent that the range of immoral conduct is amplified. This is how craving operates within a system of preconditions, in which people seek desirable objects by avoiding or by half-heartedly comforting the direct process of nature. Our responsibility is thus to help people to develop wholesome desire, chanda, and to integrate human laws with natural laws. This gives the outline of the advantages of disadvantage of happiness. The essential point is that one applies liberating wisdom, ni sarana panya, in regard to all forms of happiness, beginning with sense pleasure, until one reaches the freedom from mental defilements. While experiencing happiness, be vigilant and know moderation. This way one will remain strong and avoid mental weakness. Ni sarana panya. Apply it.